Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this meeting?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. We have regrets from Councillor Algar.
Okay, thank you. I imagine the other councillors will join us in progress then. Councillor, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Moving on to the approval of previous minutes, can we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Longo and Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the minutes are adopted. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any requests to pull an item from the agenda for discussion? And if not, can I have a mover and seconder for the consent items? Councillor Adams and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, the consent items are adopted. That brings us to our first public hearing item, the zoning bylaw amendment for Thebe Investments, Inc. At 580 Burl Oak Drive. And I'd like to call on Arlene Beaumont, representing Thebe Investments, to provide a presentation.
Thank you very much. My name is Arlene Beaumont. I'm with W.E. Outred and Associates, and we are the agents for Thebe Investments. We submitted a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit a commercial development with a mix of retail, restaurant, service establishments or service commercial establishments, and offices. The zoning bylaw amendment is not for the development itself, but for two of the uses, which are the retail and the service commercial establishments. Next slide, please. So the site is almost a perfect triangle located at the far west side of Oakville at the intersection of Burloak Drive and Great Lakes Boulevard. Rebecca Street is to the south and Harvester Road is to the north. At the bottom of our triangle, you can see there's a path, a pedestrian trail, and a row of trees. That is actually part of an unused road allowance that is owned half by the town of Oakville and half by the city of Burlington. My client is proposing to purchase from the city of, from the town of Oakville, their portion of the unused road allowance. The city of Burlington is not selling their portion, so that remains as is today. In terms of uses, the residential subdivision that you see underneath the site is actually within the city of Burlington. Other uses in the area are generally all employment uses. There is also a place of worship across Burloak Drive on the right-hand side of this photo. Next slide, please. So this shows the lands that are being purchased from the town of Oakville. They will be folded into the development site, and the total area of the development site is a little over 7,000 square meters or 0.7 hectares. As you can see, that path with the adjacent line of trees within the city of Burlington will not be impacted by this development in any way. Next slide, please. So here's our proposed site plan. We have two buildings. They're both roughly triangular in shape to be consistent with the triangular shape of the site. There's going to be quite a large pedestrian walkway between the buildings, and at the second level there will be a pedestrian bridge that connects the two buildings. Two site accesses are proposed. Both are on Burloak Drive. The one on the left side of the drawing will be a right-in, right-out only. The one on the right side of the drawing will be right-in, left-in, and right-out. Cars will not be able to go left-out from this site, and that's due to our recommendations from our traffic engineers who felt that the sight lines were better served by right-outs. We're proposing 92 parking spaces. That is 11 more than the bylaw requires. Within that 92 are 4 handicapped accessible spaces. We're also proposing 8 bicycle parking. We have submitted a landscape plan, and the landscape plan shows a line of trees at the bottom of the triangle that will screen the parking area from the residential development behind, and that's in addition to the trees that are already there. So this development will be very well screened from the residential neighborhood. I should also mention that there will be no outside storage of garbage. All garbage will be stored interior to the building. Next slide, please. This is our architect's concept of what the development will look like. As you can see, the second-story walkway between the two buildings and the pedestrian area, congregation area between the two buildings. Next slide, please. So, in the official plan, this site is located within an employment area, but is at the very edge of that employment area. The lands are designated business commercial on Schedule F. The uses, there are many uses permitted in this designation, but they include limited retail, service commercial, including restaurants, motor vehicle uses, offices, hotels, public halls, and commercial schools, and a number of others. The official plan says that retail and service commercial uses should not exceed 2,500 square meters of total floor area. So all the uses that we are proposing here meet the bylaw land use designation, and the retail uses will not exceed 2,500 square meters. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are currently zoned E2, which is the business employment, and that permits a number of uses, including a mix of restaurants, offices, and medical offices. However, retail and service commercial establishments are not permitted in the E2 zone. Therefore, we're requesting rezoning to E4, which is business commercial, so that would permit the retail and service commercial establishments that my client is proposing. Again, retail uses cannot exceed 2,500 square meters of net floor area for all the retail on the site. We do require a little bit of site-specific zoning because in the E4 zone, the required lot area is 6 hectares. We have 0.7020 hectares, so we do require some site-specific. However, the parking provided does exceed the bylaw requirement. Next slide, please. We had a community information meeting about a year ago, and there was many issues brought up. I've sort of tried to condense them into a few major issues. So traffic and parking were concerns. We have provided a traffic impact statement. As I said, both driveways will be restricted access as per the recommendations of that report. Parking exceeds the bylaw requirement, and there will be no access, either pedestrian or vehicular, from the development site or from the commercial development into the residential neighborhood. There was concern that the development will not benefit the neighborhood. Well, it's obvious that people living in that neighborhood may patronize the businesses that are going to be located in the commercial development. But there's also opportunities perhaps for part-time employment. Retail and restaurant uses often require part-time help. And so for students or stay-at-home parents that are looking for part-time jobs, this might be a great opportunity. Noise and nuisance associated with fast food was another concern. First of all, we're not sure exactly what the mix of restaurants will be. It may be fast food, or it may be restaurants with tablecloths and real silverware. We don't know at this point. However, steps are being taken to make sure that the residential neighborhood is screened as much as possible from this development. And as I said, all waste is going to be stored indoors, and all bylaws with respect to opening and closing hours for retail and restaurant businesses would be adhered to. Tree removals and an increase in hard surfaces. That was another concern. There are 4 trees, 1 on the subject property and 3 on the road allowance that's being purchased from the town. Those are the only trees that will be removed for this development, so a total of 4 trees. We've also submitted a stormwater management plan to account for the increase in hard surfaces on this site. One of the things that was brought up is the people in the residential neighborhood have just lived through considerable disruption that was created when the overpass was done on Burloak, and they were concerned about more inconvenience, more problems related to construction, and of course the reduction in property values. Again, all bylaws governing construction will be followed. There is that buffer, as I've said, and that existing screening of the site, the trail and the trees that are there will remain untouched. That public trail will remain as is. Next slide, please. So in summary, we're proposing 2 two-story commercial buildings, retail, restaurant, and service commercial uses at grade with offices or medical offices on the 2nd floor. There will be the pedestrian mall in between the 2 buildings, the 2 vehicular access points, which are both going to be restricted, and the site requires rezoning from E2 to E4 just for the retail and service commercial establishments so that we can permit those uses. The property's small size and the shape of it make it really not very suitable for a lot of employment uses. It's also immediately adjacent to a residential neighborhood. So we feel that the proposal for retail, restaurant, office is an appropriate use for a site at the edge of an employment area and adjacent to sensitive land uses. Next slide, please. So that's my dog and pony.
All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. You've generated some questions, starting with Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Can we go back to the slide where the parking stalls in the back? Could you have that site come up? Okay, thank you. So just for my own clarification, the parking stalls are right adjacent to the building. What about shipping and receiving for if you're putting commercial and restaurants in pickup and deliveries? Is there room of access? How's that going to work with the parking so close to the building?
So I don't know if you can see it, but on the far left, sort of at the corner of the bottom left corner of the triangle, there's a loading space there and goes into loading area where they will be keeping the garbage and that kind of thing. So there is a loading space provided on this plan.
So what I'm trying to understand, if you had a restaurant, say in the middle of the triangle or down the other end, how do the vehicles access to drop off food products and so forth to the restaurants?
They would probably have to deliver at a time that's not too busy and park in one of the vehicular parking, like the car parking spaces. I would think that's what's going to happen.
So what about garbage storage and so forth for the commercial restaurants and so forth? Would that be behind the building adjacent to the parking lot?
No.
What I'm trying to understand, is there any access to those back doors for deliveries and pickups and garbage disposal?
Oh, yes. So the garbage will be where the loading area is on the bottom left corner. And then, yes, there will be doors throughout the plaza, doors and windows throughout the plaza along where the top row of parking is, that people can access those stores through there. They can also access stores through the pedestrian mall.
So having the parking at the back, so really the store, I guess I'm getting concerned. The storefronts are in the front of the top of the triangle, okay? But to access those stores or commercial, they would have to go through, walk up that concourse and go to the restaurants in the front. Is that correct?
Yes, they probably would, yes.
Okay, so they can't access from the back. To me, the logic is you reverse it, and put your storefronts in the back. Anyways, that's just me. Okay, the question is also with Burlington. Why didn't Burlington didn't want to sell that piece of property? What was the rationale?
Sir, I don't know their rationale. They were approached, and they said they did not want to sell.
Okay, so the grading and so forth for that part, are they concerned about any flooding with this development flooding their back? Is there a concern about that?
That would be all handled in our stormwater management plan and in our grading plan. I don't have those in front of me, but it all would be dealt with through those, the plan and the stormwater management report. They are taking into consideration pre and post development flows.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that it's all at the back and your storefronts are on the front for access. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, through your worship. I attended the virtual public meeting. I guess it was about a year ago. So I can say, I mean, it was largely attended by Burlington. I think probably all Burlington residents, and who were obviously largely opposed to it because residential neighborhoods abutting it. And I think that's why Burlington's unwilling to sell. They want to provide a bit of a buffer from the residential neighborhood to the commercial. A couple questions I have. So you're switching zoning from, sorry, E2 to E4, and you said you're looking to add retail and service commercial, but you mentioned a lot of restaurant uses, and a lot of the uses you mentioned are allowed in E2. Retail's allowed, restaurants are allowed. So I'm just trying to understand what you're hoping to achieve by going to E4.
So retail and service commercial are not permitted in E2. So we have to go to E4. They have a lot of uses in common.
Oh, sorry, retail store. Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's the retail and then service commercial. Can you give an example of what type of retail and service commercial you're looking at?
So service commercial would be something like a hair salon, a nail salon, barber shop, that kind of thing. Retail could be a convenience store, could be, I guess, any kind of retail. They are small spaces. They're not like, you know, huge department store style units. They're small-ish spaces. So somebody's looking for a small retail footprint, an art store maybe, or something to that effect.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do see art gallery is allowed in E2. Okay, so it's largely you're just trying to be able to have a convenience store and a few things like that, and that's the purpose of the zoning change?
Yes, to permit that retail and
Okay.
service commercial.
And then a question to staff just about this presumption of the purchase of land from the town of the road right of way. Is that something that's going to be evaluated in the report back and we'll get staff's opinion, or is this something that's already been discussed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something that we would be covering in the final report to council. But in terms of the disposition of land, that would ultimately be a council decision, and that would have to have a corresponding report to it.
Okay, and we'll get a better understanding of the value of land and things like that.
That's correct.
Okay, and I imagine you'll suggest, I mean, I can't think of alternative uses, but you know, at one point a road went straight through there. You know, I don't know why we'd straighten Burl Oak again, but that used to be Burl Oak. So if there's anything on the horizon in the future, you'll let us know before we make a final decision.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you then, Councillor McNeese. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much for this. My question: why would there not be a fence that goes between the parking lots and the residents? I mean, a light shadow pulling in is going to flash through even with trees there, and a lot of the residents are concerned about light pollution, obviously in and out for the evening. So why not consider a fence or a fence and tree combination?
We can absolutely do that.
That would be great if you could do that. Thank you very much. Do you know the distance between the back of the plaza and the residential homes in Burlington?
I do not. I think my client did measure it. Now, I don't know how he measured it. I'm not sure how accurate, but I thought he said it was over 100 meters. 120 sounds about right, maybe? But I don't know, he didn't use a surveyor to measure that, so I'm not quite sure how
Okay.
he did it.
Okay, no problem. And then maybe just to staff, if you could include in your report, there's a plaza just to the north. I'd like to know what the distance between that plaza and those residences is, so we can get a sort of apples to apples understanding of are the residents on the other side of the street, that much in place, or are they that much closer, so we can sort of gauge what to expect going forward. And just as well, whether the city of Burlington has commented on this application or not. I don't know, ma'am, maybe you know that, or maybe that's a question for staff, but I'd like to know if the city of Burlington has put any comments forward on this application.
Mayor Burton, the City of Burlington is a commenting agency, and they have provided comments on this application.
So we'll get those comments in the final report then, I guess? Oh, sorry, they were in there, I think. That's right.
Yes, through you, Mayor Burton.
Okay.
The comments are still coming in, so there will be a more detailed outline of the comments included, and I can incorporate that into the matters to be considered as part of the future recommendation report.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Could you walk us through the bike facilities that you've got on the site again?
If you go back to, my presentation has a slide that shows them adjacent to the pedestrian walkway. Next slide, please. You can see the silver bike.
I see you've got
right there.
a small number of bike lockup circles.
There are 8 in total, is what
Okay.
we're proposing.
I wonder if that's adequate, given what you're trying to do. So that's a piece of feedback that I've got for you. Second is the northbound traffic out of this site. How would somebody go northbound?
So the only way you can go out of this site will be right. You will not be able to go left, which would be northbound. They will if you need to go northbound immediately, you're going to have to make some sort of a turn and then come back around northbound, because we won't be allowing northbound out.
And where would the logical place be for that?
Probably, I'm just guessing here, people would turn right, go into the subdivision, and then come around to come out the subdivision on the other side.
Oh,
and go left
so
at their
I
lights.
could see why people might be kind of annoyed by that. And in the alternative, they're going to be trying to go into, I don't know, the church property and doing a turnaround there, or they're going to be doing a U-turn on Burl Oak.
Hopefully not the latter.
Or worse, Great Lakes, or at the intersection there. That sounds like a problem to me, and I wonder if our staff could report on that particular issue. The last question I've got for you is, in the change from going to the business commercial, there's I believe, a greater allowance for restaurant uses. What percentage of the space do you think is intended to be for restaurants?
At this point, I have no idea of what uses will be there. We're probably 2 years away from leasing any space, and it will just be what's in demand at that time. But there will be a cap on the amount of retail space at 2,500 square meters.
Of retail, but what
retail.
about the restaurant?
There's no cap on the restaurant in the zoning. We could potentially, if that's something the town would like, we could potentially cap that as well in our site specific.
So I wonder what the intended mix is there, and I wonder if our staff could report on that, recognizing that you are effectively on the edge of the business community, and the intent is to support the business community there, as opposed to it being a pure retail location. There was some questions about what's going to happen on the Burlington side of the right-of-way at the back of the property. Is there intention there to continue having, I think there's some kind of bike trail or walking trail space back there. Is that going to stay? What's happening to that? And what's the potential connection point between this property and that?
So that was something that did come up at our community meeting, and the residents were very clear with us. They did not want any connection between the development property and, at least on a direct connection between the development property and their neighborhood. They were concerned about security issues and that kind of thing, and they were very clear that they did not want a connection.
I appreciate they don't want a connection into their neighborhood. They don't want some kind of connection directly to Thelma Street or Stella Lane, for example. But do they, is there going to be, so I asked you about bicycle parking earlier. Is there going to be a connection point for pedestrians to walk onto that trail from the site that you've got? So if you go back in your slide deck, I think it was maybe 2 slides earlier or something where you showed the site plan there. One more. Not that one. That one.
Okay.
So where you've got your parking lot, you have no, there's no addressing the back of the property with respect to, you've got this Burlington portion of unused, the road allowance, and there's no effort in your site plan really to address the fact that you've got this adjacent property, other than you've got a parking lot there.
Parking lot and screening, whether that be fence and trees or both. That was very clear. They made very clear to us that they wanted, you know, a real barrier between themselves.
A complete barrier, as opposed to being able to access the bicycle trail or walking trail, wherein people would, from this site, would have to go to the far north or the far south, which I guess maybe it's no difference because they're.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I guess there's no difference. If somebody's on the site and they want to go south or north on that trail, they're going to have to go to the end of the triangle to get to the connection point. That's all. There's no way to walk from your plaza, your pedestrian mall, directly onto the Burlington portion of unused road allowance where there's that trail.
No.
Okay. That's all. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. So you're spotlighting interconnectivity, I guess. Councillor Haslett-Dill.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. This is more for staff. One of my comments is I'm a bit concerned about the site, how the site plan would be configured. I've heard your explanation about the loading, but given the number of units that could potentially be there and the varying demands they'll have, while we normally won't look at site plan, can you, when you come back, have some assessment about loading and unloading and the flow of that and how conducive that is to the site? And I concur. I thought that the amount of bicycle parking looked low, and I also was wondering the location of it, if that was the ideal spot for it.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll just respond, if I may. That
Yes, certainly.
We're going to be going through site plan approval with this development. So things like bicycle parking can certainly be dealt. You know, maybe we need more spaces. Maybe we can move them around. It certainly that would be something we can consider at site plan.
All right, I think that's exhausted our questions. Thank you very much for your time and your information.
Thank you.
Council, we have a registered delegation, Nadim Akhtar, and is Nadim here? Or joining us virtually, Madam Clerk? All right. Are there any other members of the public here with information for council to consider? I'll add, in case it isn't clear, this is not a decision-making meeting. This is an issue-gathering meeting, and staff are listing all the issues raised by council and any raised by the public to be dealt with in their recommendation report when that finally comes back to us later. And so I will, since there are no volunteers from the public, I'll confine this to table, and I'll ask for a mover and seconder of the agenda listed motion to consider to receive the information. Councillor McNeice, and a seconder, please. Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. And that moves us along to the recommendation report for inclusionary zoning enabling official plan amendment 77, supplemental information. And I'm going to call on Sibel Von Kersel, the manager of Midtown Oakville and Special Programs, to provide a presentation. And then we'll have questions from council and see if we're ready to adopt that.
Good evening, council. Here I am again. 2 weeks ago, we talked about a community improvement plan, which were sort of the carrots to receive affordable housing within Midtown. And tonight we're talking about inclusionary zoning, which is sort of the stick to require affordable housing. So tonight I'll just quickly go over the recommendations of the staff report, talk a little bit about the proposed official plan amendment 77 and the impact it has in terms of providing for affordable housing, and then we'll talk about next steps in terms of the implementation of the official plan amendment. In terms of the recommendations, the first one is to adopt official plan amendment 77, which is the enabling policies to allow the town to, in the future, pass inclusionary zoning bylaws. So this is just to set the framework and permit the town to move forward with inclusionary zoning at a future date. The second recommendation is our standard recommendation, which is that council, that the notice indicate that council has considered all written and oral submissions and that they've been addressed appropriately. The third recommendation is just a note to advise the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who is the approval authority for OPA 70, which was the Midtown official plan amendment, to indicate that one of the policies that are in that amendment are now being repealed through this one and being replaced with a new policy. So that's just to inform the minister of that change. And then the last recommendation is with respect to the peer review that was prepared by Enberry Lyon Consultants. The Ontario regulation requires that council sort of acknowledge and accept in NBLC as qualified to have reviewed the inclusionary zoning, financial viability, and housing market impact analysis that was prepared by SHS Consulting. And you'll remember that in the appendices of the report, there is an explanation of why NBLC is considered to be qualified to do so. In terms of the purpose of OPA 77, as I mentioned, it is policies in the official plan that authorize the town to require the provision of affordable housing within new development. This is the enabling policy framework, and within that we have addressed all of the required policies as per the Planning Act and Ontario Regulation 232/18. So those policies speak to the location in terms of where inclusionary zoning would be permitted, which are within protected major transit station areas like Midtown and Bronte Go. And if the minister was to order the town to adopt a community planning permit bylaw, then we could also use it in those instances, even if it's not a PMTSA. The OPA also requires that there be pre-zoning at the same time or prior to adopting inclusionary zoning bylaws. So we want to make sure that the official plan is, the zoning to implement the official plan is up to date before we start to require the affordable units. There is policies regarding what is the threshold number of units. Right now, we're using the minimum that's required per the Planning Act, which is 10 units or more. the future zoning bylaw that would, provisions could have a higher number. But we're just going to kind of start with the minimum as per the Planning Act. We also have policies regarding the target household, so to whom these inclusionary zoning units are intended to be used in terms of that household income threshold, which is between the 40th and 60th percentile. What the maximum price or rent per unit would be and where you would get that information is also established in the policies, which speak to the same affordable housing thresholds that we use for our development charges bylaw. It also requires us to include the affordability period. So again, we're using the maximum, which is 25 years. The inclusionary zoning bylaw in the future could be less than 25 years. The maximum share of net proceeds are also established in the policy. And again, we're using the maximum per the Planning Act. When we actually go ahead and adopt the inclusionary zoning bylaw, the maximum could be less. And then finally, there are policies regarding a commitment to monitor and review, and those are also in accordance with the Planning Act, which requires monitoring on a 2-year, every 2 years, and a review within 5 years of the adopting of the policies. So adopting OPA 77 is another way that the town demonstrates its ongoing commitment to facilitating development of affordable housing. And this commitment started with the town's strategic priorities. And then it's also identified as one of the implementing actions in the Town of Oakville Housing Strategy and Action Plan. By adopting this bylaw or these policies, we begin to facilitate the development of affordable housing to address the housing needs that are explained and identified in the housing needs assessment. And by adopting these policies, we begin to create greater certainty for the provision of affordable housing units. And we also encourage partnerships between non-for-profit and for-profit providers to build and maintain affordable housing units, as was explained in the Planning Act tools to facilitate the development of affordable housing. By adopting the OPA, we complete the succession of steps that are required in terms of following through with inclusionary zoning. So the first step being the establishing protected major transit station areas, which was first done through the region of Peel. Then to undertake the housing needs assessment and do a peer review of the inclusionary zoning assessment. So those 2 steps have been completed. And so the next step is adopting the enabling policies. And then in the future, we would then proceed to adopting the zoning provisions, inclusionary zoning provisions in our zoning bylaws or community planning permit bylaw. Again, monitoring on a biannual basis and then updating the policies and bylaws as needed within 5 years. So in terms of the next steps in implementation, should council adopt OPA 77, the next step would be to undertake an additional inclusionary zoning assessment to then narrow down and be more specific in terms of our inclusionary zoning provisions for the forthcoming bylaw. And once that bylaw is in place, then we start to work with the development community and identify the inclusionary zoning units. Those are registered, and there are agreements that are registered on title with those units to ensure that they are maintained as affordable for up to 25 years. And then in terms of the longer term implementation, it's that ongoing monitoring. And then as units are sold, the town would begin to receive a portion of net proceeds that result from the sale of those units. And then we continue to review our IZ assessment and official plan policies and update them accordingly. And that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation, and I welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we're ready to question or even adopt. Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for the report. Just a few clarifying points. So in the report on page 10 of 18, there's a growth funding tools analysis. Can you just confirm for me, are DCs payable on affordable units?
So because these are below the threshold in the ministry's bulletin, the inclusionary zoning units, or actually any inclusionary zoning units, are exempt from DCs.
Right, so in this analysis, yes, this isn't money that we would pay out. This is money we would be foregoing, but in fact, it would already be foregone because the province has said we don't collect DCs on this housing.
Right.
So a lay person reading it and looks at the 21 million might go, but it's really not 21 million that we are providing. It's in compliance with what the province has indicated and enables us to get those 650 units over the course of decades.
Right.
Okay. As well, reading some of the letters from the developers, et cetera, there was a question about off-site units. So if they have three buildings on their property and choose that they would like to put some of the affordable units on a different property. When you say off-site, do you mean outside of Midtown or the PMTSA, or off that one specific building?
Through you, Chair. So yes, the off-site still needs to be inside the protected major transit station area, but not on their specific site. And those comments were received per the draft of the OPA. Since then, we've done some further clarification to make that distinction.
Okay, thank you. In some discussions over the last few years about affordable homes, the importance of having a mix of housing within a tower, if you will, and that there's some dignity and that it is not, quote unquote, an affordable housing unit, but rather they are mixed within all of the other market-based. In the language that I looked at, you changed the words to say maybe. So does that mean when you're reviewing the actual application, you may allow them to put their required units all in one building, or I mean, is that the flexibility that you've left in?
Through you, Chair. So just for clarification, are you talking about the off-site units?
Sorry, I'm talking about the affordable units all being in one building.
So the inclusionary zoning would only allow 5% to be required as that meeting that affordable threshold. So they're always going to be in a mix of different valued units within like market units, because it's just the 5%. Now, what might happen is that that 5% may not be in one building, but could be, transferred over to another building through phased development. So if you have a 3-building proposal and altogether they were going to be 300 units, am I doing my math right? The 5% would, instead of having them in individual buildings, could be all put into one building. But again,
but that would
they
still
would
only
be mixed market. Yeah.
It'd still be mixed market. Okay, thank you very much. It's just a question that came from a resident. I wanted to be sure. I think, and just for clarity, the MZO places calls out that there will be no requirement for inclusionary zoning on the TOC lands?
That is correct.
Okay, and so you've got it. You've documented in the report that 50% of the sites are actually exempt from inclusionary zoning.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, so there are a number of applications, and 50% of those applications, because of the timing of when those were deemed complete and what those applications are, would be exempt, and they actually are a large proportion, but we still have much more development to come, and so that's where we get the 650 units if every site maximized their density based on the calculations we had done for the Midtown work.
So a building that is now considered a complete application, this wouldn't, they would still have an opportunity to participate in affordable units by taking affordable units onto their site, but it wouldn't be required.
Everyone is very welcome to provide affordable units, but those ones that are transitioned, we wouldn't have the ability to require it.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you. Through your worship, would this or could this apply to our other PT or PMTSA in Bronny?
So,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes, Councillor.
Okay, now through OPA 70, or I guess it would be 77, it wouldn't directly apply to Bronny, would it?
through you, Chair. So the OPA 77 would apply to any area that's identified as a protected major transit station area, and right now that's just Midtown and the Bronte Go areas.
So just so I'm clear, so put in OPA 70, it wouldn't, because that applies to Midtown, although pulling it out of OPA 70 into OPA 77 allows it to apply to both MTSAs or PMTSAs?
Through you, Chair. So the one change we did in OPA 70 was just that the policy was speaking to one day we will adopt a zoning, inclusionary zoning. So now if we go ahead and adopt it, then we would just change the language to reflect that it is a policy that's in effect. But the OPA 70, it made the enabling policies for the community planning permit system and also identified Midtown or updated Midtown policies. This one is just about enabling inclusionary zoning in those PMTSAs.
Okay, thank you. And obviously I'm for something like this. I think, the post residence was a great example of affordable housing coming to life. And I think we just need many tools in our tool belt to bring affordable units to life. And this is one of the tools we have available to us. So I'm certainly in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question with respect to the defensibility of the restrictive covenants on title for selling prices or resale prices. My understanding is in common law, resale prices for subsequent owners are hard to enforce. I'm wondering if there's is there statute, and I looked it up quickly, I couldn't find a quick answer. Is there a statute that reinforces that ability to enforce that on subsequent owners for the full 25 years so that it's unassailable in a court?
Through you, Chair. I'm not a lawyer, but the Planning Act does say that in terms of implementing inclusionary zoning, we have the right to have these agreements registered on title, which would cap the sale of the units so that they are maintained affordable for the 25-year period.
Is there statute, is there statute to back that up? So the statute actually states that in the revised statutes of Ontario that gives that coverage for defensibility in the future?
Yeah, I was going to say the Planning Act, but I was kind of looking to the lawyers to make sure I'm not being out of.
Ms. Chandra, we welcome your wisdom on the subject.
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, I don't have much to add. I think the question has been answered correctly, that there are provisions in the Planning Act that would provide for that level of affordability for up to 25 years.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. So the Planning Act is a statute. Councillor Haslett-Thiel again.
Thank you. Could you just help maybe the public understand, when this is in place and we finally can put shovels in the ground and the market has re-established itself, individuals that would qualify for an affordable home, how do you see that being managed? Is it, if they have a partnership with Halton Region, that's an easy one. But independent of Halton Region and the Hatch program, you know, what are some examples you could share about how this would come to life for other residents?
Through you, Chair. So the policies, the fact that you're capping the resale value of the unit, I think, does mean that certain persons may not want to purchase those units, which leaves it open to those who would benefit from the better, you know, the more affordable price, with the recognition that they may not be able to leverage that unit in a future, future market sales. So there is one version of the implementation where we let the market do what the market does. The other way in which this could be implemented, which could address specific families and households, is through the partnerships with non-for-profits, whether that's Halton Region or some of the other organizations that we heard from a couple of weeks ago. So those are the two ways in which that can be addressed.
And is there any additional language that would encourage that partnership?
I mean, there is encouragement for those partnerships, but there isn't a direction for it. There isn't a requirement.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I know when they were here, they were very encouraged and very encouraging of us to do something. Perhaps I could look for a mover and seconder. Councillor Haslett-Thiel and Councillor McNeice, you spoke so eloquently for it. Let me recognize you for that. Madam Clerk, I would like to have a recorded vote for this historic event. So could you please call the vote?
Councillor O'Meara?
Yes.
Councillor McNeice?
Yes.
Councillor Duddick?
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm?
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
Yes.
Councillor Giddings?
Yes.
Councillor Longo?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Councillor Knoll?
Yes?
Councillor Grant?
Yes.
Councillor Adams?
Yes?
Councillor Lischina?
Yes.
Councillor Nanda?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. That's unanimous. Let's move now to the recommendation report for the town-initiated official plan amendment 338 for the North Oakville East Commercial Study implementation. And I'm going to call on Anna Petrus, the planner and policy planning, and she's going to provide us a presentation. We have a delegation also, which I would propose to go to after the presentation, and then we would have questions from council. Shall we proceed, Ms. Petrus?
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, and members of the public. My name is Anna Petrus. I'm a policy planner. I'm pleased to bring forward agenda item 8.2, the recommendation report for the town-initiated official plan amendment for updated retail and service commercial policies in North Oakville East. The OPA, known as OPA 338, is attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report. The purpose of the staff report is to recommend adoption of OPA 338 and to pass the related bylaw. The OPA is implementing findings of the North Oakville East commercial study and represents the advancement of strengthening retail and commercial policies to support Oakville's growing communities. In the presentation tonight, I would highlight why this matters, set the context with the North Oakville East commercial study and the policy framework, provide an overview of the key components of the OPA, and highlight matters raised by council and the public. I'll recap the key revisions to the OPA, and I will close with the recommendations that are in front of you tonight for your consideration. The much-needed retail and service commercial uses are not being delivered in terms of the quantity, scale, and build form. Through the North Oakville East commercial study, a key finding was that a projected demand of approximately 1.8 to 2.2 million square feet of retail and commercial space is needed in the long term to satisfy the needs of the growing community. In response to the limited retail and commercial uses coming online, this OPA provides an updated policy direction. It strikes a balance to allow policy flexibility while also providing direction that aligns with the secondary plan vision for compact, complete communities. Through the North Oakville East commercial study, it was a comprehensive process and engagement with interested parties, both from the project consultants and town staff. The study assessed the current and future needs of North Oakville East and provided the in-depth analysis in terms of the quantity, size, location, and building formats, and it provided a set of policy-based recommendations which have informed the drafting of this official plan amendment. The policy-based recommendations also reviewed the existing policies of the secondary plan. North Oakville is part of the town's urban structure, which is intended to manage growth and direct that intensification to strategic growth areas. The secondary plan clearly sets the vision for North Oakville to guide development of an urban community that is compact, walkable, mixed use, and achieves the vision of mixed use communities. Various sections of the existing policies apply to retail and commercial uses and overall provide a framework that is flexible in terms of the location and amount of retail and commercial that could be developed. In response to this current policy framework, the commercial study recommended solutions that build on the existing policies and maintain the town's urban structure. Engagement with interested parties was initiated through the commercial study and specifically included the landowners group NOCB and industry experts who are participating in the development of non-residential projects in Oakville and other municipalities. As staff advanced the implementation, NOCB was kept informed on key steps and we've engaged along the way. In January 2026, 2 meetings were held with NOCB to share the policy directions where staff were headed and received NOCB's comments. On March 23, 2026, staff held the statutory public meeting and received both council comments and written submissions, which are addressed in the staff report and Appendix B, the comments table, which is before you this evening. More recently, town staff met with NOCB earlier in May to share information and answer questions. And on May 7th, the public notice was issued and the official plan amendment was posted publicly online. And that has helped us lead to where we are tonight. I will turn my focus now to the key components of the official plan amendment. And the effects of the OPA include changes to the secondary plan by adding a new section 7.3.4 with policies for retail and service commercial uses directed to commercial nodes, primary activity nodes, and secondary activity nodes. It's updated area-specific retail and commercial policies to support new commercial areas. It's updating land use policies in sections 7.5 and 7.6 in the Trafalgar Urban Core area and Dundas Urban Core area to strengthen policies that clarify development direction, clarify building typologies for mixed-use buildings, add minimum commercial requirements, protect for replacement of existing non-residential uses, and strengthen policies for interim commercial uses and phase development, which is coupled with the urban design direction. Lastly, the commercial nodes and specific locations of primary and secondary activity nodes have been reflected on the community structure figure, which is shown on this slide. During the statutory public meeting, Council raised matters to consider, and the detailed staff responses are provided in Appendix B, the comments table. The matters have been addressed, and some matters have led to the following official plan amendment refinements. Council had asked about the interim retail and commercial policies, and we've provided clarification that the interim retail and service commercial uses will follow the planning and development principles that form the basis of all interim and phase development. Council had asked about grocery and food stores, and we've responded by adding a specific provision for a food store within Commercial Note 4. We received comments about modifying the color scheme of the community structure figure, and we've done so in terms of all the commercial areas that are reflected on figure NOE1, the community structure plan. And we've added a policy to encourage parking structure that aligns with the urban design directions. Through the public process, written submissions were received from landowners. Matters raised are included in the staff report. I will highlight some of the comments we received and relates to the following as seen on the slide. It was policies related to the interim uses and phase development, the minimum requirements for all the commercial areas, so the commercial nodes, the primary and secondary activity nodes, the replacement policy for existing non-residential uses, site-specific considerations and related to active development applications, and lastly, the urban design directions and policies stating that retail and service commercial uses should be located within mixed-use buildings. The comments have been addressed, and where appropriate, it has led to the OPA refinements. I'd like to highlight some of those refinements now that have led to this recommended OPA. So staff have maintained but clarified the interim commercial policies, as this is an important response to public comments to satisfy the short-term needs and still allow initial development to proceed. The intent is to achieve intensification over the long term. The interim commercial uses have been linked back to existing policies that speak to how all interim uses and phase development should proceed. Staff increased flexibility for the minimum requirements at commercial areas. One specific change has been that the requirement at Commercial Note 2 and Commercial Note 4 has been adjusted. For the commercial nodes, we have also defined the geographic extent by applying an approximate 10-minute walking distance radius in the urban core areas. This allows for more retail and commercial opportunities to be developed in that broader geographic area. And just to iterate again, within Commercial Note 4, we've added the provision for a food store to take advantage of the greenfield context and opportunities that are there. Staff have updated the policy language to increase flexibility for the replacement of existing non-residential uses and focus more on the intended function. Lastly, staff have made edits to provide site-specific clarifications in alignment with existing policies by making mapping edits to the community structure figure. All the comments received have been considered and addressed in advance of this recommendation presented tonight. The OPA strikes a balance and strengthens the policy framework to achieve both the short-term needs and the long-term municipal planning objectives. The OPA refinements have increased the overall policy flexibility and have clarified the development directions. The OPA maintains the intent of the policy framework that is within the secondary plan, and at its core, it is intended to deliver on the compact, mixed-use, complete communities that are the long-term vision for North Oakville. To close the presentation, I share with you the recommendations tonight to adopt OPA 338. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, are there questions? Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you so much, and thank you for making some of those changes and working with some of the community who thought that maybe there might be some inflexibility in terms of how we get retail and in particular grocery stores up there. I guess I don't see any sort of a formal report back opportunity, and I'm wondering, in terms of trying to set reality and how we bring these things to fruition versus what a policy vision is. Is there something that we're going to have in terms of, okay, in 3 years we're going to report back on what we see and on whether this is coming, on whether what we've done working? Because I think there is some concern that the interim measures might not provide the flexibility. So can you comment on any sort of a formal report back time to council or to future councils when they can expect, hey, it's working, or we're on the right path, or we're not?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, through you, Mayor Burton. We're constantly reviewing the implementation of policies, through the achievement of, or through implementation through development applications. And so we'll begin monitoring how successful we're being in terms of achieving the policy vision and policy intent for North Oakville. We also have our upcoming official plan review for the next year or two through the next term, the beginning of the next term of council. And so we'll be able to report back on these matters as they evolve through that. Our concern really is to try and raise the floor more and bring some requirements into effect that are going to further support and strengthen the need and the delivery of commercial in North Oakville. So we'll be monitoring that quite closely and reporting on that as needed. And then I think the market really will be a major player in how we achieve these policies. And so as those conditions begin to improve around market and real estate development and commercial development, we'll be able to monitor those changes and to adjust if needed through that.
Well, I appreciate the monitoring and adjusting. I guess it was just for council to know that, hey, we're gonna check back. I mean, I know that there's a lot of factors in there. There's the market, there's a number of these things, but yeah, I guess so. There's no formal mechanism where we'll report back in 5 years or in 3 years, or like we'll just wait and monitor and see when staff bring it back to us and say it's working or not.
Through your Mayor Burton to the councillor, just to clarify a little further, councillor, as development applications come forward, we can report back through those opportunities on how we're achieving those policies that were brought forward tonight.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll?
Thank you. I want to return to two of the issues I raised in the past. I see the other ones are addressed, but the two that I want to ask you about are specifically with respect to floor plate and how space is allocated on the property. I see in the Q&A in the comments table, it talks about the fact that design guidelines would be created to support mixed use and that it would be addressed on a case-by-case basis. Is there nothing more prescriptive that we can do to establish reasonable size floor plates so that retail actually has a chance to succeed in these commercial developments?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we did take a look at that internally as part of this work. We're definitely trying to strike a balance to not be overly prescriptive that could actually hinder proposals coming in. So we did feel that a good balance could be struck by, framing the policies as we're presenting and leaving the more finer details through guidelines for mixed-use development. And that's something that our team is developing. They've started that work now, so there's definitely specific matters we can factor in if you would like to have more information on it. And I will open it up to my manager if he would like to add more, Kirk.
Thanks, Anna. Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Knoll. So similar to the response around development applications, when we have an application before us, we'll be able to work with that applicant to refine how the uses and the sizes and the spaces are deployed across that site. At the official plan level, as Anna mentioned, we want to keep it fairly open, fairly flexible, fairly broad, but point in a direction. Once again those applications come in, those applicants are bringing forward their market intentions through possible tenants, and those spaces will be determined in collaboration with those that incoming application and those possible tenants, and then staff through our urban design guidelines and in fact zoning as well will contribute at that time.
Okay, I just remain concerned about the changing face of retail, and a lot of the proponents of these applications will take the lowest hanging fruit in terms of who will rent the spaces, and you end up with commercial spaces filled with service providers as opposed to actual retailers and restaurants and things that animate that retail service experience that we expect in our communities. We've suffered that in Uptown Core over the years in certain developments, and I'm always very much aware of that concern. The second one, very similar, and that is with respect to street animation. Again, it looks like we're just going to provide guidance on that again, instead of being more prescriptive in terms of where the entrances to retail spaces are, as opposed to try to get them to animate the street presence, as opposed to being basically dominated by parking spaces, as we typically see in most of the commercial plaza developments that we're finding in North Oakville.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, it is a similar response in the sense that we do think the details can be achieved through the urban design guidelines. And I would like to also add that through the policy, we do encourage that it is fronting on these smaller roads, and we do have policies that say the retail and service commercial uses should be oriented to the street. So that's the piece to help make that connection and create that street animation. We have fairly limited ability to control the specific uses that come in, but we definitely work through applicants in terms of the mix of uses and how we can achieve a range of non-residential uses, so not just service, but also the restaurants that you've alluded to.
On both of those issues, what kind of, beyond guidelines and beyond working with the applicants to try to do better, do we have any stick on this at all? Is there the ability to be able to horse trade to get better? I go back to some of the experiences that we've had in our ward, and I've even seen happen in Ward 7, for example, is that you end up with a lot of retail or you end up with a lot of spaces that are not to what the community expects. You end up with, again, service businesses as opposed to retail businesses. And so I just want to know if there's some sort of ability to be able to achieve what you're proposing in guidelines here. Is there flexibility in terms of the negotiation ability, et cetera, or is this simply at the will of the developer?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we do have that ability to work through applications. I don't know, Kirk or Gabe, if there was something else to add just in terms of at high level.
Through Mayor Burton to the councillor, I know the exact situation you're talking about. There's a number of spots along Oak Park where it's either parking facing the street, or you've got the back end of the building facing the street, you've got utility pipes, et cetera, that doesn't really create the type of walkable environment that we're striving to achieve. We've been consistent in our messaging through the secondary plan, and you see that reflected in the guidance as well, which is it's a pedestrian-first community. We want to ensure that it's oriented towards the pedestrian, and therefore you face the doors to the street. To your point, what happens though is you end up with parking because it's designed around the car first. It becomes very challenging from a staff perspective too, when we try to make that point. Well, then where do the cars go? Well, then you have patrons who complain because now they have to park around the back, they have to walk to the front. There's rarely a win-win situation that we're into. All of that said, through the development applications, we strive to achieve what the plan intends, which is for it to be pedestrian focused, to ensure that there's a clear line of sight from the sidewalk to the building, that it's easy, it's accessible, it's safe for the pedestrian. Through the development applications, as Kirk and Anna are saying, that's oftentimes the leverage that we use, is to try to get to that exact state where we're focused on the pedestrian, where the bike's going to be parking. You saw it through the public meeting. Might be great, a lot of people, but maybe not the best spot for bikes. So all of those things go into the formula that we're working through when we're dealing with the site plan. But in that step before, we're using the official plan, the direction from the official plan and the amendment to direct how we're going to implement the zoning. So we'll do things like maximum setbacks from the building face to the sidewalk, so that we're trying to pull the buildings forward and really create more of that animation, create that enclosure, that sense of enclosure along the street. All of these things add to that. It's not any one particular mechanism or tool that we can use. We have to use all of them to try to achieve what you're looking for.
Okay, and the question about the stick here, and that is with respect to the fact that we go through all this exercise and we approve the applicants, the building's built, and all of a sudden now the developer is basically, again, taking the lowest hanging fruit, and they're flipping all the units around like we experienced, and you've nailed it on the head in terms of what I'm referring to. Do we have any stick in there? Is there anything we can legislatively put in that actually holds the proponents to stick to what we negotiated in that original plan, because we did that in the Uptown Core, for example. That was always the plan, and it just never worked out.
Short answer, Councillor, no. There isn't a real way. The last set of buildings that we did right at Oak Walk and Oak Park, the buildings were designed, the doors were facing it, didn't matter. They put the front door, quote unquote, towards the parking lot, because that's where patrons are coming from, is using their car. It's an ongoing tension that we have. There has been a magic bullet. If we could have found it, we would have been doing it already.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm not being critical. I'm more probing to see if there is opportunities here, whether there's best practices in other communities that have been used to achieve this, or whether we get luck of the draw, which sounds like what we get.
We face the same frustration. We push and we push and we push, but oftentimes we don't get exactly what we're looking for. So sometimes it's a tension between, do we go through an appeal process and we get nothing, or do we try and push and we get as much as we possibly can otherwise? The other factor, and I think as Anna was mentioning, is we're working towards creating a design compendium which will help inform ways in which, to use your term, best practices of how to perhaps design and develop mixed-use buildings so that it works not just for the driver but also for the pedestrians.
Right. Okay, well, I really appreciate that response. Thank you very much. Thank you for work on that.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you, Anna, for the report. Appreciate it. A few additional concerns, though, because I think one of the concerns is that we pass this, but we're not really getting out of it fully what we need, as some of my other colleagues were talking about. One of my first questions, though, is we had the provision for a food store in Node 4. Why do we not have one for Node 3?
Through the mayor to the councillor. So Node 3 is the Nayagawa Urban Core area, and through that appeal process, my understanding is that provision has been successful and it is in the policies, and it is an important element to protect for food stores, and that's something we can do the same in commercial Node 4, is to take advantage of those opportunities and be specific in ensuring the community has not just convenience stores, but actually grocery stores, so a food store.
So we will be able to get one in Node 3 through the decision, or?
Ms. Chandra.
Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Nanda, yes, in the NUC official plan policies, there is a provision for a food store within the Nayagawa Urban Core.
Okay, perfect. So that was one of my big questions, because we really need that. Because we were talking about pedestrian-friendly 10-minute walk to, and one of the concerns is if everyone had to go down to Nayagawa and Dundas, it wouldn't be pedestrian-friendly. And then I saw that one of the recommendations through one of the developer letters was to try to put down the FSI, minimum FSI. Would we ever do that through negotiations? Because I saw that in Node 2, staff reduced the minimum requirement for commercial. Now, I want to ensure that we don't do that everywhere.
Through the mayor to the councillors, I can definitely provide context and clarification to that. So some of the landowner comments received that specifically in commercial Node 2, which is at Dundas and Nayagawa, there are more constraints and more limited opportunities. And there are some existing commercial and retail plazas there already. And commercial Node 4, which is primarily still a greenfield context at Trafalgar and Burnham Thorpe, what we had done is swapped the requirements. So the overall number has not changed, but we made that adjustment to, on the one hand, better respond to some of the constraints and limitations in the one node and take greater advantage of the greenfield context in the other node. So we have not lost out on any of the intended minimum requirements we are seeking that we've proposed through this OPA, but rather just made the swap to be more responsive to comments and the realities on the ground.
Okay. And just for context again, in Node 3 for the Nayagawa Urban Core, is it commercial both on the north and south side of Burnham Thorpe? Or are we more looking at commercial on the north side? Is the south side corner gonna have something there as well?
Through the mayor to the councillor, through the NUC settlement OPA, there are requirements for commercial on all the blocks that are around the intersection. And that approach is a little different because they've taken a block by block distribution. So there will be some retail and commercial on the south properties on the south side.
Okay. And then just for nodes 1 and 2, because there's a lot of commercial on the south side, is that, so it's going to reduce what is required on the north side of Dundas? Like nodes 1 and 2 have south and north of Dundas. So because of all the retail on the south already, it reduces the requirement on the north side?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it has not reduced the requirement because the commercial study was done with the boundary of the North Oakville East secondary plan area. The way we've written it into the official plan amendment is just to coordinate with lands on the south. So for example, at Trafalgar and Dundas, realistically, a lot of the opportunities will be through intensification on lands that are south of Dundas. So the requirement that we have in there can happen on any or all 4 corners around the intersection within that approximate radius that we've identified. And similarly at Dundas and Nayagawa, it can happen on the north side as well as on the south side of Dundas through intensification. So we've had a specific policy added for that coordination to ensure that all 4 corners have the opportunity and potential to develop that would all contribute to that minimum. So the minimums that we've identified have not changed. The only change we've done is essentially to swap commercial node 2 and commercial node 4, as I had already alluded to, just really to respond to comments and to take advantage of existing opportunities in a greenfield context.
Okay, and so I guess one of the major changes is that we are requesting that there not be standalone anymore. So like how we have the Fortinos Plaza, we would not allow that or just not suggest that there's any kind of plaza in any of the other nodes. Is that what it means by not having standalone retail? They're removed from this?
Through the mayor to the councillors, so the overall direction is definitely to move away from the standalone traditional single-use commercial buildings. However, through the interim use policies that we have, that is still permitted. So the policies still permit for a standalone, a single-use grocery store to come in and be developed that, could have surface parking. But the difference here is we've coupled it with the site configuration and urban design directions to have a design that could meet short-term needs today, but also help us achieve intensification over the long term through what's called an intensification plan. So if you would like to come in and do that traditional standalone food store, as an example, it could be something else, then it is coupled with, thinking of how future provision of roads will come online in the future and the intensification of blocks around this standalone building. So the interim policies allow that short-term need to still be satisfied, and that was one of the key pieces also to respond to comments received.
Okay, so but if we had the food store, grocery store, node 3 or node 4, if they were in the mixed use and they were a part of a development, we would still have minimums for what those food stores would have to be if they were incorporated into a condo building? Would we have minimums for what those would need to be?
Through the mayor to the councillor, so the only minimums we've identified is at the commercial node as a whole. We're not identifying specific uses with specific minimums. We know roughly how big a grocery store could be, but it may be designed in a more urban way where you could still achieve the intended function, a smaller footprint, as you're alluding to perhaps in a mixed-use building. So there's no minimum or a standard specifically for a grocery store. It is captured mainly through that provision for a food store within the node, but exactly the size of it is not prescribed intentionally to allow for that natural allocation of uses to come in and then determine what is an appropriate size.
Is that something we could do if we wanted though, just so we ensure that it's not smaller than what we would expect it to be? Like, for example, them having to go to another grocery store because the one that's built up there now is not sufficient. So now you have that same problem again, that it's not sufficient, so now they do have to drive to one that where they can do their proper groceries.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I can start a response, and then perhaps if others on the panel would like to chime in. Sometimes we may want to move away from the model in the sense of the way that it's designed and the type of function you can achieve. So arguably you could achieve the same function and diversity of products or merchandise in a smaller footprint in a more urban context. So it's difficult to put a specific number on it in which then applicants would be required to meet that minimum. Whereas perhaps they could demonstrate that in an urban context, the same function and intended use for retail could be achieved in a different way. So we've intentionally stayed away from defining specific uses with a specific amount. And those type of details can always be fleshed out through a development application at the zoning level, where they would identify a minimum as a specific development standard as part of the zoning bylaw to say, how big's the grocery store? You know, where exactly on the block it's gonna go and other related details.
Okay. I think I would just be cautious about that one because I just feel like that would be something that would be important and I wouldn't want it to be downsized. A grocery store is a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
We all know how much we need from it, correct?
Through your Mayor Burton, if I can just supplement to what Anna was commenting on. The challenge that we have with the grocery stores in particular is that their formats constantly change. You can have a Farm Boy, for example, which has a very small footprint, less than 10,000 square feet. It's very rare that you're going to be getting a large superstore, for example. You're not going to be getting 150,000 square feet at the bottom of a residential building. A number of things that the retailers also do is they trial different kinds of building floor plates, different sizes, because it really for them is coming down to how much can they sell per square foot. So they're not going to be putting in an overly large building, so hence it doesn't make a lot of sense at this point for staff to be suggesting a minimum size for a grocery store as part of a mixed-use development. It may not ultimately work for the retailer, and then as a result of that, you don't get any grocery store. So you have different formats, whether it's a Pusa Terry's or a Hasty or a Rabba, where you have slightly smaller, more that incidental type of grocery. For those that are doing their big, say every 2 week kind of grocery shopping, they may be going down to Fortino's, they may be going to Longo's, they may not be going to perhaps all of these spaces, but we want to ensure that we can still accommodate them as well. So sometimes it's better to have the application come in, work through the zoning process to get it to the right size so that the size of the grocery store is also going to work with the provider of the residential. We've seen it as at a metro as well in Toronto on Parkland. There's one there where they've integrated into the building, but it's a much bigger development overall where they've been able to accommodate the type of grocery store retailer.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal, your turn.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. So continuing on with that thread, we're all concerned about making sure, and I know you are, about a complete community. And you've given some examples of how you work through that through the development application. Do we ever showcase or look for opportunities to bring those new best-in-class kind of approaches to urban grocery stores to the developers? I know they do their own research, but there's a high level of resistance, it seems, to how could we make this work? And this is the kind of thing that's needed to make it work when you read some of the letters. And yet there are clear examples in Toronto of urban grocery stores that are really a full grocery store. And in Vancouver, it's the same. And so I'm just wondering, is there place or a role for us, helping them see some of those unique approaches that solve the need in a very different way than what you would see in a large commercial plaza.
Through the mayor to the councillor, we did best practice analysis through the commercial study. That was one of the first things we had done as background research and a jurisdictional scan of best practice and what other jurisdictions are doing. We can revisit that information and see what we could pull up, and definitely it never hurts to be proactive and as a way to showcase urban models of how mixed-use buildings with, as an example, grocery store could be achieved on the base of a podium with residential on top.
Okay. So thank you for that. I mean, I think ECDev could probably help as well. My other is, we've talked about residential development over top of commercial plazas in other reports that we've had. In the intensification plan that you would require, are there components that would, now, maybe a stick, might be a stick, Jeff, that you must provide, you know, in that intensification plan, the ability to build on top of your stores, or can you just expand a little bit? What are you going to look for in that intensification plan so we are not, Councillor Amir said, the monitoring, how are we making sure that there really is a concrete plan that could come to life?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the kind of set of policies we've introduced in a specific context to respond to the comments is with the interim uses. So as an example, those appropriate siting and configuration policies that would accompany would require the provision of local roads, creation of safe, active, and transit pedestrian routes, transit-oriented streetscape and routes, main entrances of buildings to orient the street, provision and configuration of parking, achievement of both short and long-term development objectives. So this is one that could help us achieve that intensification of buildings and how that could look like in the future. So those are some of the details of what we've introduced through the recommended policies.
Okay, I was hoping it would be a little meatier than that, but it sounds like you would look for that in the discussion around, you know, could we build on top of this with any level of ease? Just like they look at parking garages now and say, is there something you could transform it to relatively easily? But it sounds like that'd be an ongoing discussion. All right, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, Council, we have a registered delegation. It's Marshall Smith from KLM Planning Partners. Madam Clerk, can you bring Mr. Smith? Hello, Mr. Smith, we see you. We look forward to your information.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and members of Council. Glad to be with you tonight. Our client is Northwest Oakville Holdings, Inc. My name is Marshall Smith. I'm a partner and a registered professional planner with KLM Planning Partners. Our client's been working in the area for a long time. They've made various submissions for all things North Oakville East Secondary Plan, and this is something that they have a particular interest in. They have advanced some work on their own concept, and they are working with the landowners group on a broader concept for the area. And this is all kind of filtering into, I guess, a dialogue with the municipality about that concept in the area that's around specifically community area node 12, and that's a primary activity node in the draft official plan amendment. We did submit a letter on March 23rd with some of our concerns for the statutory public meeting. Very encouraged to see what staff has done here, actually. I think, you know, probably we don't get enough of a chance to say how good a job staff is doing and the city is doing or the town is doing. And I guess listening when these submissions are made. So it looks like a lot of good progress has been made. And you know, I'm very encouraged in hearing the dialogue here today, because I think a lot of the concerns that council has raised also reflect the concerns of our client. Just in, generally ensuring that that policy that ends up getting put in place doesn't restrict certain outcomes and does facilitate an optimal commercial arrangement to serve these areas. And we would like the opportunity to work with staff a little bit more on these policies. We think it's so close to a place where our client could support them with some modifications that we would like the opportunity to have that discussion with staff directly. And so our request today is that council defer adoption of this OPA so that we can collaborate with staff and try to have some of that beneficial language put into the policies that we believe could help take this in the right direction and guarantee some better outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Councillor O'Meara?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to Mr. Smith. What would some of those things that you want to help get over the goal line that you don't believe are there, what would be an example of some of those things?
Sure, I guess, just maybe elaborating on some of the concerns here. We're a little bit worried that the way the policy is structured could result in a number of developments moving through with, no commercial or token commercial included. And there could be a scenario where there's a last man holding the bag, so to speak, right? Not to say that commercial is a bad thing. Not everybody wants to build commercial. There are definitely people that do want to build commercial and respond to the market. B, that the, space gets built in a way where the market doesn't want it at the rate that it's delivered or in the form that it's delivered, and you end up with vacant spaces that are being constructed through those applications. And another concern did go back to that sole commercial use as well, noting that there are challenges in delivering commercial, which are technical in nature, delivery of those loading spaces, dealing with the noise when, say, a grocery store is receiving a delivery with, from a transport truck, the parking matter that was brought up. There are some issues that, we believe that the sole commercial use delivery can respond to. And we believe that there are examples of commercial developments that do, I guess, address some of those other, I think they're urban design problems in a lot of cases, right? With the parking and the function and how people get into those units. So in short, really, it seems like through the development of the concept plan for this area, we really don't want policies put in place that restrict some of that creativity coming into play and cause us not to pursue something like potentially single-use commercial developments in addition to mixed-use developments in these areas.
So do you feel you just ran out of time, or that there's some opposing viewpoints here? I mean, what is it, just need more time, or you think, you've got more convincing to do? I'm just trying to see what deferring would if you feel you just didn't have the time to get to where you needed to be.
Yes, our client directly submitted a letter for ahead of the public meeting, and there was a text response to that, but we did not have the opportunity to directly converse with staff, right, about some of those solutions. And we know your staff are very well versed and understand this landscape well, and there's been a lot of study done here. But we would like that opportunity to directly converse with staff, and hopefully we can make some positive contributions to how that policy comes out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Smith, the councillor asked you if you had any specific changes that you wanted to mention, and I only heard a list of fears and apprehensions. And I'm not personally motivated to give a deferral for a long discussion about fears and apprehensions. And I was satisfied by the staff's information about how they dealt with the specifics of your proposals that we all received over the course of this work. I mean, I think you missed an opportunity there.
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can be clearer as well that if the policy were not to preclude the delivery of single-use commercial within these areas, that would be a positive modification. I know that it is in there dealing with the interim condition, but it would be a positive inclusion in our client's view if that type of delivery for the commercial space could come about. Something else that we would like to see is language for convertible uses expressly included within that policy. So convertible uses would be of the nature that the market is not demanding the commercial today. Say you're the first development within one of these primary activity nodes, and it is entirely possible that there are spaces that will be demanded at some point in the future for commercial, but it's not today. And so a live or work type of permission in zoning and a live or work type of design through site plan that could facilitate residential now, but when the demand comes about, could accommodate a small scale commercial user or a medium scale commercial user, that these express policies would be beneficial to see in the official plan amendment.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, thank you for your time and your information.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council, I'll confine it to table. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
I just have one last question for staff. The delegate used the phrase "not holding the bag," so that if they end up with, they're one of the last developments in the commercial node, how do you assure that they don't have all, like this overall requirement in a commercial node is either fairly, I'm not sure what the right word is, distributed or considered in the process?
Through the mayor to the councillor, one of the things that we've done in terms of to not hold the bag is, sorry, if I could just collect my thoughts for a moment.
So the question really is there a way to prevent rear-end loading the commercial onto the land that's left?
Through the mayor to the councillor, if I may try again, I do apologize for that. The way we structure the policy is as a should statement. So we do want to ask, that is the baseline, that is the requirement, but it provides the opportunity for the developers to come in and justify a different number if that is justified through their planning work. So it's not a hard stop requirement and that the last person in the door will have to bear all the commercial. That is not how the policies are written, and that is surely not the intent. So we have made that modification to should statements that allows applicants to justify a different number. And if we are in a worst case scenario of the sort that the last person in the door must do all, we would definitely work with the applicants and we would rely on the comprehensive information they submit through their development application and that planning justification as to why, say, a lesser or a different number is justified. We are hopeful that that will not be the scenario. We will be able to work with all landowners and all development applications as they come in to allow development applications to contribute proportionately over time. And we've intentionally not put in any sunset clause or a hard deadline or requirement, so there shouldn't be any misinterpretation that such number must be achieved by X date. Again, that is not how the policies are written and that's not intended. And that's part of where the flexibility remains to continue working with landowners and achieve what is realistic and remain flexible in how we achieve those requirements at the commercial nodes as well as the primary and secondary activity nodes. And I do thank you for your patience as I gathered my thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I'd rather you have done that, so you did great. So what I'm hearing is that the balance will always keep the need of the community at the forefront while you're trying to do this proportional or justification of what commercial is in each of the different areas.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, we would work through, yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, can we get a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Knoll and Councillor Nanda, actually, Councillor Nanda, you might like to be the mover. And Councillor Knoll, you could trade places, be the seconder. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. That carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Now, Councillor O'Meara, you, under our rules, the next motion, which is the new business, the notice of motion, this notice of motion actually got in time to give full notice, and so it's not a waive the rules to consider it now or wait for a month. It's actually in order now. So Councillor O'Meara, you're the acting mayor. I, as the mover, will be vacating the chair. If you're at all concerned about being able to see everybody and would like it, as I go down the order of acting mayors, we have an alternative who is actually in the room. What's your pleasure, sir?
I'm okay to just call on you if you'd like, and you can take it from there. Either way, yeah, it might be a little hard to chair from here, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, why don't I acquiesce and pass the gavel to whoever's there? You can see if people have their hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your answer.
Sorry. So if it's easier for somebody who's in the room who can see if a hand is raised, then I'm happy to pass the gavel to whoever can chair the meeting at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very sporting of you. And the next in order acting mayor is Councillor Shia, who's not here. And that brings us back to the letter A and Councillor Adams. Councillor Adams, I pass the chair to you.
Thank you very much. I will recognize you as the mover of the motion and Councillor Longo as the seconder if you would like to speak to it. And I'll leave it to you as to whether you want to read it.
I would like to read it. It substitutes for a speech pretty well and at the same time informs people. And I want to start by thanking Catherine Hurley for her contribution to this and salute her long-standing commitment to heritage in our community and her many contributions to it. So the motion reads, whereas the town of Oakville places a high value on the conservation of cultural heritage resources as a fundamental component of community identity, sustainability, and complete community building, and whereas Oakville has a long-standing tradition of conserving cultural heritage through designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, heritage conservation districts, municipal grant programs, and active community stewardship, and whereas the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, the ACO, is proposing a province-wide Heritage Helping Housing Grant Program consisting of new application-based matching grant program of $10 million annually to support the adaptive reuse of existing heritage buildings to create new housing. And whereas the ACO proposal represents an important opportunity to generate new housing within existing buildings while minimizing demolition, reducing carbon emissions, supporting local jobs, and advancing the principle of the greenest building is the one that already exists. And whereas a range of properties in Oakville could be eligible or well-suited for such an initiative, including Main Street commercial properties, places of worship, and older municipal buildings that may be vacant, underutilized, or capable of adaptive reuse for residential purposes. And whereas conserving and reusing heritage buildings to accommodate housing supports Oakville's strategic objectives related to sustainability, climate action, cultural heritage conservation, and housing choice. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Oakville endorse the proposal by the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario for the creation of a province-wide Heritage Helping Housing Grant Program, and that the mayor send letters to Premier Doug Ford, Minister of Tourism, Culture and Gaming Stan Cho, Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism Graham McGregor, the Minister of Finance Peter Bethlenfalvey, MPP Oakville and Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement Stephen Crawford, and MPP for Oakville North Burlington and the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Gaming Effie Trianopoulos, urging that the funding for the HHHGP be included in the next provincial budget and on an annual basis thereafter. And further, that a copy of the resolution be circulated to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and Ontario Big City Mayors for their consideration and support. And Mr. Chair, I would appreciate a recorded vote on this.
Very well, we can have a recorded vote at the appropriate time. Councillor Longo is the seconder. Do you have any other further comments, or are you happy with what's been said? Very good. And I will search the floor for any delegates from the floor who might like to provide us information. Are there any speakers in the room here today? Come on forward and introduce yourself to council, and we look forward to your information. You have up to 10 minutes.
Good evening, all. I'm Catherine Hurley. Thank you, Mayor Burton and the Planning and Development Committee members of council. It's an honor to appear before you this evening as a fellow Oakvillian, as well as a member of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, to respectfully request that Oakville joins with other municipalities across the province in endorsing in principle the ACO's proposed Heritage Helping Housing Grant Program. I've just abbreviated my earlier presentation. For those committee members and members of the general public watching this evening and who may be unfamiliar with the good work of the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, now in its 93rd year, the ACO is the province's leading non-governmental organization dedicated to the conservation and reuse of Ontario's built and cultural heritage. Through education and advocacy, the ACO encourages the prevention and adaptive reuse of buildings and landscapes of architectural, historic, and cultural significance. Heritage Helping Housing isn't the first collaboration between the ACO and the town of Oakville. We only have to look back to 2023 when the province amended the Ontario Heritage Act, requiring municipalities to either designate or delist its heritage properties. Thanks to ACO's successful advocacy and Town Council's immediate response and dedication of heritage planning resources, we as a community, an Oakville community, are now close to achieving an aspirational goal of protecting close to 100 of Oakville's priority heritage properties, an achievement that we should all be proud of. But this evening is now about Heritage Helping Housing, our next collaboration. This proposed grant represents a rare, coherent policy opportunity to address two of Canada's most pressing challenges, the acute shortage of affordable housing and the accelerated loss of cultural significant heritage properties. In closing, and before welcoming questions from your worship and Acting Chair Adams and committee, I would like to thank your worship for your leadership and longstanding support for heritage preservation in Oakville. To Councillor Longo for seconding the motion, and Councillor McNeice through the Heritage Review Committee, and to the committee's members for support in principle. Also to the town's heritage policy and planning staff, Kirk, Kirsten, and Gabe, for fashioning this Made in Oakville motion as we join other municipalities in requesting provincial funding support to advance the Heritage Helping Housing Grant Program. On behalf of the ACO, thank you for considering the Mayor's motion and request for support. And just to conclude, avancez. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your delegation. Councillor McNeice, do you have a question of our delegate, or do you have other comments?
I just wanted to thank our delegate, Catherine, for bringing this to our attention. We always appreciate your wisdom on it. And certainly adaptive reuse of heritage buildings is both good for the environment, good for our cultural heritage. And it's something that's hard to do. So I think getting support and potentially, recognizing the impact of dollars behind it is something that's common in many other jurisdictions and throughout the US. It's not something that I think is out of reach. And when Catherine and I were speaking about it, it's, we have real examples in Oakville, the OT Old School, the Metro Marine building in Bronte. There's many examples right here at home where a program like this could benefit. So again, thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I think this is a great step forward. Of course, we'll be in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? I see none. Thank you very much for your delegation this evening. It's much appreciated.
Thank you all.
Are there any other comments or questions of this item? Seeing none, then I will call for a recorded vote. If our clerk could undertake that at your convenience, please.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara?
Yes.
Councillor McNeese?
Yes.
Councillor Duddick?
Definitely yes.
Councillor Chisholm?
Yes.
Councillor Hazel-Thiel? Councillor Giddings?
Yes.
Councillor Longo?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes.
Councillor Knoll?
Yes.
Councillor Grant?
Yes.
Councillor Adams?
Yes?
Councillor Liszczyna?
Yes.
Councillor Nanda?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you very much. I return the gavel to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Are there any other items of new business to discuss? Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. I just have a little bit of a welcome to everybody, which is to welcome you to the Northeast Oakville Fair. That's going to occur this coming Sunday at 11 o'clock in the morning, all the way until 4. And we look forward to welcoming everybody, including everybody in this room, to the Northeast Oakville Fair that will take place at Glen Ashton Park, right outside of Iroquois Ridge Rec Center. Come one, come all. There'll be lots of fun for the whole family, and special thanks to Councillor Knoll, who's bringing both popcorn and a sound system for the fair this year. So we appreciate Film.ca's help in that, as well as all of our staff here at the town who have helped to make it happen as well.
Well, thank you, Councillor.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you and your office for helping us organize the permit.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. I think of it as Six Fest, Ward 6. Anyone else? All right, then are there any requests for reports? All righty, then in that case, it would be in order to have a mover and a seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Longo, I see your hand, and Councillor Grant, I see you, thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed. And with no further business to discuss, that ends our meeting. It's been terrific working with you, and I look forward to the next opportunity. Good night.